I'm Benjamin Barber. I've been a political theorist and a democratic theorist, somebody who cares deeply about democracy for the last 50 years. I've written 18 books, 600 articles about democracy. But today, because the democratic crisis is really a global crisis and we live in a global interdependent world, I've written this new book, which is called If Mayors Rule the World, Dysfunctional Nations. I don't have to prove that to you. We all know how dysfunctional they are. Rising cities. Dysfunctional nations, rising cities. And this book is really a call for new democratic activism at the level of the city, because where cities work together across borders, we have a possibility not just of democratic governance within cities, but democratic governance worldwide among cities. So it's a book about citizenship, it's a book about democracy, and how our cities can fill in the despairing dark space left by dysfunctional nations no longer working very well. You know, what's your mantra? What's this book about? It's this: it's time to change the subject. For 400 years we've been talking about democracy in nation states, citizenship in nation states, the international world in nation states, governance in nation states. Let's change the subject. Let's start talking about cities, because when you talk about cities and democracy, cities and governance, cities and global regulations, you have a new conversation, new questions, and positive new answers. So this book is really changing the subject, not international relations, intercity relations, not nation states, but urban districts, not citizens as abstract members of a distant bureaucracy, but citizens as engaged members of a local community. The purpose of writing this book is in part to simply highlight and underscore the growing influence of rising cities in a 21st century, in a new millennium in which nation states seem to be losing their capacity to govern, losing the 400-year-old history of sovereign governance that they had, and we're looking for new forms of governance. So part of it's simply to say, cities are already doing that. We already have inner-city associations like the United Cities and Local Governments, and ICLE, the Environmental Issues Organization, the C40 web protocol, city protocol in Barcelona, which puts together best practices on a website for cities around the world. So the first thing is to simply emphasize is that cities are not just doing well internally, they are working together in intercity associations to collaborate. But the second thing is to move the issue forward, to widen the envelope, because I'm also suggesting here that as cities are doing more and more of what nation states can't do, dealing with climate change, dealing with immigration, dealing with trade, dealing with transportation and culture, they are in a position through intercity collaboration to create informal, bottom-up mechanisms of global governance. Not a big world government telling people what to do, but a coalition, an assembly of cities, opt-in, you can go or not, mayors working together to share best practices. I'm suggesting that in this century, we may gradually see the emergence of cities rather than nations as global democratic governors, and as a result see many of the problems we're not dealing with very well now through nation states, climate change, terrorism, immigration, health pandemics, see them dealt with in a more effective, a more democratic way by mayors who are capable not just of governing their cities, but together of governing the world.